Welcome, folks, to the Teacher's Playlist podcast. This is episode 2, where I bring educators' greatest hits to the forefront. I'm your host, Jennifer Moroz. The key question I ask is simple. What is your greatest hit? My hope is to bring outstanding educators to the mic to share their insight and capacity, and in doing so, create a playlist for any educator seeking momentum and much needed, I might add, inspiration. If you have a hit to share or comments about this podcast, you can leave them in the comments or contact me at genmo.org. A warm welcome to episode 2 to the lovely Megan Price. She's an Indigenous educator in School District 57 here at home in Prince George. She's a teacher-librarian at Prince George Secondary School and runs programs through the Learning Commons. Megan passionately believes in the importance of Indigenous education. Her great-grandmother was a residential school survivor. Megan is beginning to connect with her Métis culture, which was lost in her family due to racism and internalized racism. Megan, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to inspire and share your greatest hit with other educators, and most importantly, the concrete and tangible way that educators can bring your hit into their classrooms. So welcome, Megan.
Thanks for having me.
So happy to see you. It's so great to see you. I've known Megan for a bit. She may have made a cameo appearance on the film, The Story of the Métis, which is featured here on this YouTube channel. And I'm going to put a link to that video in the video description as well. You can use that. That was a project, a multimodal project for School District 57 to learn about the history of the Métis. And you may have a famous Métis relative. Could you tell us who that is?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm descended from Louis Riel's sister. So he's my, I believe, great uncle, or maybe great uncle.
Oh, so that's a really interesting connection there, and beautiful equally. So I'm excited about this today, folks, because the point of this podcast is to talk to excellent educators and have them share their greatest hits. Everyone has one. But what's special about what Megan's doing today is what she's sharing is concrete and tangible, and she's going to help you apply it on Monday or Tuesday, whenever we head back. And that's what's so beautiful, is those entry points for everyone to apply what Megan is talking about. So Megan, can you tell us, I'm actually very curious, could you tell us a little bit about your educational background, how long you've been teaching, favorite grade levels, where you've taught?
Yeah, sure. So I've been teaching, this is my 7th year. I teach high school. My kids were small when I did my Bachelor of Education, so I intentionally chose high school. I'm not a very patient person. I didn't want to waste what little patience I had on other people's kids. And I've taught, right? I've taught grades 8, 9, and 10. Um, I don't know if I have a favorite grade, but I really enjoy teaching social studies. Um, that's probably my preference. And I've taught at DP Todd and PGSS.
Okay, so you're drawn anyway to, social studies 9, grade 8, 9. And now we were just talking about how you actually have a really interesting platform as a Learning Commons teacher at a very big high school here in Prince George. So in that vein, sort of, what would you describe as the greatest hit as an educator so far?
So far, yeah. In 2002, Joseph Jeffrey, who's our district librarian, asked me and my colleague Rebecca Restad to write a paper to be presented at the Canadian School Libraries Conference that year. So we wrote it about our process of decolonizing our learning commons. It was really intentional on both our parts. She really took the approach of looking at our collection to see who we had featured, and I worked hard on making sure Indigenous kids would see themselves reflected in the space. I always come back to this quote by Kayla Larson, and I think she's at the Weewa Library at UBC now, where she says that Indigenous people don't see themselves reflected in academic spaces in libraries, and I took that to heart and continue to focus on bringing in Indigenous writers, authentic Indigenous like posters, rugs. Just I want the space to be welcoming to Indigenous students, Indigenous staff members, Indigenous community members.
And some of that, I mean, in your case, in the Learning Commons, which is, I think, in your publication. So
Yeah.
that's going to be part of your hit that you're sharing. So in your publication, could you describe a little bit about Treasure? Is it Treasure Mountain?
Yes. So
Okay.
it's a librarian, like a Learning Commons conference that
Okay.
goes back. I don't know too much. The first one was held in the States, and they actually looked out the window at the mountain, which was called Treasure Mountain. So that's why it's called that. And it's an annual conference now with not just teacher librarians, but Learning Commons facilitators around the country.
Wow. So that you were part of that, obviously.
Yeah.
And the bit that you wrote, which I'm going to share in the video description, I'm really excited about it, are tangible applications of your passion that you've brought into the Learning Commons. So could you talk a little bit about what you do in the Learning Commons to bring these things about?
Yes. So we will source authentic Indigenous art, authentic Indigenous like rugs and pieces of furniture when we can afford them. We try to have an Indigenous themed bulletin board all the time because those rotate throughout the year. Um, and really try to showcase Indigenous authors.
Okay, so if somebody is just starting out, I mean, this is, and actually, I forgot to ask you this. I wanted to back up just a little bit. Could you talk a
Mhm.
little bit about, is it your grandmother who is a residential school survivor?
Yeah, so she was half Indigenous, and was quite white passing. She did attend residential school, but she not for very long because she was actually someone's maid. So she attended residential school. She
Oh,
didn't learn how to read, and then she got this job as a maid, and so she didn't actually have to go back to school. And interestingly, she
yeah,
married a white man who
yes.
was, I don't want to call him a writer or a journalist, but he did submit pieces to the Vancouver Sun like regularly. So he was a writer, and his wife didn't know how to read. And that to me just really speaks to like uh power imbalance, gender dynamics, racial power imbalance.
And so she didn't have to, so I'm trying to understand. So
Yeah.
she didn't have to attend school because she was married. Is that like, was that a way out essentially for a
the
lot of those women?
the Her way out was working as someone's
Or
maid.
maid, yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's how I guess she got old enough and got the job and didn't have to go back. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
that does speak volumes to power imbalance.
Yeah.
Uh, it's funny because we say residential school survivors and we don't know much more about them past that.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to hear about your grandmother, what
Mhm.
had happened. And is she still alive?
No. No.
So
She's she's gone. My grandpa, her son, is gone.
okay.
And
Oh, yeah.
when I started looking into getting my Métis Nation citizenship,
Right.
I again because of racism and internalized racism in my family, it was
Mhm.
I had to be strategic about how I went about it. And
Yes.
my
Did you have difficulty getting a hold of documents?
um,
And
I I did, just because it was so long ago,
Yeah.
and my grandpa was born in Ontario, and so yes, I did, but it really wasn't a very onerous process. But because no one else in my family had tried to get their status, I didn't have that
Right.
to lean on. So
Yeah.
ultimately, um, I didn't get my status because no one else in my family has it. And my aunt said at the time that she thought that my grandpa would have been in support of it. And she thinks if he had lived longer, he probably would have done it, which I wish he would have, because if he did, then I could have got mine. But it's still, I haven't exhausted all my avenues. But it's like sending away for documents and getting copies and
Mhm.
waiting, and BC
Mhm.
government, Ontario government, like it's lengthy.
It is. And it's
Yeah.
interesting how what I love actually is the fact that you're an educator and you can share some of these experiences with the students in front of you. Do you ever share anything about your history, or engage them in those conversations?
Absolutely. I tell whoever I can, whenever I can, that I'm related to Louis Riel.
Which is very cool. And actually it's all based in curriculum. So do you find there
Yeah,
to be really natural sort of entrances and or access points into social studies 8 and 9?
absolutely. Socials 9 for sure. And I taught it this past semester that's just ending, and I gave an assignment about you had to decide whether Louis Riel was a hero or a villain. And I
Oh,
told all the
love
students, you
it.
don't have to say he was a hero just because you know I'm
No.
related to him. You don't. I know. Don't think that you have to side with me. So I made sure to say that. But when you present the information of the
Uh,
Red River Resistance and everything
yeah.
he did for the Métis people, through their lens of today, kids will almost always say that Louis Riel was a hero.
Through the lens of today, that's interesting that you
Yeah,
said that. That is
yeah,
excellent because that's another sort of competency or capacity is viewing using today's judgments,
yeah,
with yesterday's behavior and how difficult that can be. And it requires a lot of um, sort of abstract thinking and also rigorous sort of debate and
yeah.
unpacking. Yeah, so you do that. Do you ever do that in your learning commons? Like, do you have research, any kind of research challenges? Is that something that you've taken on yet, or something you might
That's
do?
that is something to look forward to in the future. I It was in September I finished getting my teacher librarian certificate. So
Oh,
when I
wow.
was yeah, so when I was in the library before,
Yeah.
was in there just sort of by chance,
Yes.
and wasn't really I didn't have the education to be a librarian. But now that I do, yeah, I have so much more information about how to partner with teachers and club and build assignments, and yeah, the opportunity is really there.
Wow, it's amazing. And I'm so grateful that you're sharing what you're sharing. So if you were to, and we're going to attach, what are we attaching today? Could you describe it for the audience, what we're going to attach?
So this is the paper that Rebecca Rostad and I wrote to be that we presented at Treasure Mountain 7, I believe it was, about how we were decolonizing our learning commons. Like,
Right.
what were we doing and what we're very intentionally doing.
Yeah. And you
Mhm.
mentioned many of those things already,
Yeah.
just with bringing in authors
Mhm.
and even down to furniture and
Yeah.
artwork.
Yeah.
And is there anything that you can think of that really inspires you for next steps? Like, I'm just curious because
Yeah.
it's kind of a big sky. Like there's so many other things that you can do. So now that you've got librarian training,
Yeah.
you could kind of delve into research as well. But is there anything else that you haven't done that you want to do?
So, we all sort of know the Dewey Decimal System. Like that's
Yeah.
sort of there's sort of two main ways to organize a library, and the Dewey
Okay.
Decimal System is one of them.
Yep.
Again, through today's lens, John Dewey was super problematic, and organizing our Indigenous stories that way is actually really colonial.
Tell me what you mean by that, or tell us.
So John Dewey was definitely a white man, an educated white man. Uh, in
I don't
early,
really understand the system anyway, so I'll just skip over that. But yeah, no, I really appreciate this because I'm getting an education. Yeah.
yeah, he and he had I don't know exactly, but he has sort of like a bunch of different ways to categorize Christianity, for example,
Okay.
um, and and then all other religions are more or less lumped together.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
and
true.
And for example,
Okay.
women kind of have one category. Like there's the category of women in the Dewey Decimal System, um, whereas I don't things that men would typically have been interested in and taken
Hmm.
ownership of back
Hmm.
in the 1800s when he set up the system is yeah organized like down to minutia and bit by bit and bit
Oh, but women are all one category.
yeah
Like,
just one yeah um and
that makes
and
sense.
it's actually like a really racist system, which today in 2024 we can look at that and say that's racist. At the time it was just what it was.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's really colonial to organize our indigenous stories this way by this old white dude.
I know that's
And
fascinating. So,
yeah,
are there suggestions or ways that we can decolonize
there
our
is
organization?
so the Weewa Library at UBC
Okay.
is there's something called the Brian Deere system, and
Okay.
Brian Deere was an Indigenous guy, and he I forget exactly what his system is because I it's a work in progress.
Well, it's new learning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Of
So
course. Yeah.
so that's something we're looking at. Is like how can we have
Wow.
all these amazing indigenous novels, all these
Yeah.
indigenous nonfiction resources. Let's take them out of this like racist colonial system and let them exist like as they are.
Yeah, I know. And I'm cringing a bit now when I think back to how I've organized in the past with Indigenous stories label on bins. Like now I'm cringing. It's true though. Like it's not in it's almost in its own little category. Like you
Yeah,
have to go over there where there's so much scientific knowledge and understanding of the world to draw upon that really deserves to be in those under those
yeah,
categories. Yeah.
highlighted. Yeah.
Oh, 1,000%. So that's,
Mhm.
yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That is new
Yeah.
learning for me. Absolutely. Megan, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh my gosh, my mind's blown. Okay. And I'm so excited for you that you're starting this term, I get, or is it this
Ah,
term, or we call it
semester.
semester,
Yeah.
full time in the
Full
Learning
time.
Commons.
Yeah.
So you can, that's great. And you're probably feeling very supported as well in your work, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And and honestly, I wouldn't care if I wasn't.
No, no, because it's your learning commons. So
We have all this information about how best to serve Indigenous kids, and we need to start meeting their needs. Like we are
yes,
so far past the information gathering stage.
I
We
know.
need to start doing. And we are doing, right?
Yeah, and I think what you're attaching the paper that you wrote with the what I loved about it is that I read it and I'm going to go back and look at it again, but it I looked and thought, "Oh, that's that I could do,
Yeah.
that I could do."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not exclusive. Like, and I
No.
think that's what people worry about is that somehow decolonizing or indigenizing spaces or whatever we
Mhm.
want to say is somehow exclusive and not everybody should do it. It should just, and it
And
is all of our work, don't you think?
it is. And you're anything takes practice. You're not going to be awesome right off the bat. You're going to like take small steps, just the same as when you started teaching, the same as when you started teaching a new subject or assessing a different way. It all just takes practice, and the support is there in this
So
process.
how, yeah, it is. I know it
Yeah.
is. And that's why I'm so happy for you is that I know you would do it anyway because
Yeah.
this is your passion. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
However, it's a very big topic right now and it's sort of I think everyone's on board. Um sort of morally and ethically,
Yeah.
but it's now what? Like, how do we do this?
Yeah.
How? Give me a how.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've got lots of good suggestions in the paper that you're attaching. I'm hoping everybody takes a look. Folks, take a look. And this is good, I would imagine, for educators straight K through 12, because none of them are grade level associated.
Right.
It's okay. This is
Yeah.
great. So just sort of wrapping up, because thank you, by the way, for taking time out of your clearly busy schedule, Megan. You're busy learning and doing amazing things. How would you, if you could, in the last few sentences, encourage other educators to try out your HIT on Monday or Tuesday? Where would you think would be a reasonable access point for somebody like me just starting out?
Um, talk to your teacher librarian, and just start by getting some books. Get a few books. The purchases will be approved.
Like
The
what books would you recommend? Like
uh,
books about
okay.
how to decolonize?
I mean, like Indigenous picture books.
Okay.
Wob Canoe has written a couple books for like
Love Wob.
middle grades. Yeah, yeah. David A. Robertson has written some amazing books for middle grades. I don't know as much about like the younger picture books, but oh shoot, I can't think of her name off the top of my head. She used to work in the district, and now she works for like
Oh,
the Nation district.
I know her name.
I
It
know.
went bloop.
Prince, Leona Prince.
Yes.
Leona Prince
I was gonna say
has,
Price. It's somebody PR. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
Leona Prince. Yeah.
she's written some amazing
She
books.
has.
Yeah, and like
Okay.
that's she's local. She's local.
And I'm so in love with the concept that you're working toward, and I can't wait to follow up with you about how to actually decolonize the way that we organize the library.
Mhm.
That is amazing. There must be really good information out there, I hope,
There,
about
I really think UBC is at the forefront. Um, and it's like trickling down to public schools and stuff. Yeah.
that. That's
Mhm.
amazing. I'm so grateful for this. Thank you so much, Megan. And thank you on behalf of BC educators for sharing your hit.
Thank you.
And if you had something on the cover of your album,
Ooh.
yeah, so you've got an album cover coming out with this
Okay.
episode. What would you want on your album cover to represent your greatest hit?
Ooh. That's great. Maybe like a Métis beaded like strawberry blossom.
Got it. Yep, that's perfect.
All right.
And maybe even a little, side connection to Louis Riel, because that is
Maybe. Yeah.
that's important lineage. And I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great evening. Thank you,
Thanks.
folks,
You
for
too, Jen.
joining us at the Teachers Playlist podcast. And we will see you for episode 3 in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody.